Welcome back to our Developer Basics video course. We will now start tweaking functionalities in Nuxeo Platform by removing a button from the web user interface. XML contributions are what we will use for that purpose, as they are the way to configure existing Nuxeo Platform services. Most of the time, you actually do so by using Nuxeo Studio's graphical interface. However, there are way too many extension points, and we can't get to all of them right now. So, how can you take advantage of them when you can't configure them graphically? We will switch to manual mode and write XML configuration on our own. Big Corp managers asked us to remove the export button from the user interface to simplify it. That's a great opportunity to use Nuxeo Platform's UI development mode. Once activated, you can press Shift and hover over any user interface component to get all the details you need to overwrite it. If you are unfamiliar with the UI development mode, click on the link currently appearing on the video to see how to activate it. Now that it is turned on, let's gather information about the export button. We can see that it is an action, having the document export ID. That's all we need for now. An action in Nuxeo Platform is a button, a tab, or a link put into the user interface. They are added by contributing XML to the action service, which provides an extension point for that purpose. We should take a look at the export button's contribution if we want to override it. The Nuxeo Platform Explorer, available at explorer.nuxeo.com, will help us do just that. Once there, choose your Nuxeo Platform target version. You will be presented with hierarchical links from which you can choose to browse the components declaring the services extension points, and even the contributions made to the extension points directly. Browsing extension points is the most common choice, and that's what we will do here. Now we can search by keyword. Let's look for the action keyword. The actions extension point from the action service looks promising. Let's have a look at it. As you can see, we are provided with several interesting elements: documentation explaining how to write a contribution to this extension point, a Java doc link, and a list of contributions made to this extension point by default in Nuxeo Platform. Let's search for the actions ID in these contributions. The corresponding result is returned. Great. Now we'll follow the link to the corresponding contribution. From there, we'll take a look at the contribution's XML source and copy it. Now that we have the XML basis, it needs to be added into a bundle. The easiest way to do this is to place the XML contribution into our Nuxeo Studio project. Make sure to keep this tab open, as we will need it later, and switch to Nuxeo Studio. From there, choose the Advanced Settings XML Extensions menu and add a new entry. We will name it BC Remove Export Button here, BC being a prefix for Big Corp. Note that the ID we define here is just for us to find it more easily, only its content matters. We will paste the XML and adapt it. Here's the final result. We define to which extension point we should contribute. Then, as the extension point's documentation says, all we need to disable an existing action is to mention its ID and place an enable equals false property. If we save, deploy, and check the result, you can see that the button disappeared. Great. Except there is something we need to take into account. When two contributions try to define the same element with different parameters, the last one to be deployed will be kept. If we do not double-check the contribution's deployment order, we could possibly end up with a random one. As a consequence, we would sometimes have the expected configuration at startup, and sometimes we wouldn't. To complete the contribution, we need to switch back to the Nuxeo Platform Explorer and copy the component's ID where it is located. Then, in Nuxeo Studio, we will add a required tag and place the component ID into it, and save. We're done. Note that Nuxeo Studio actually takes care to express a dependency on the default contributions automatically in order to minimize risks, but it is still a good practice to add your dependency manually. On top of the actions extension point we used here, we could also mention the filters extension point in the action service. It can be used to refine the display conditions for the existing actions. A frequent use case is to restrict some existing buttons to a user group or to bind them to a specific permission. Speaking of permissions, the permissions and permissions visibility extension points in the security service allow you to create and display custom permissions. You could use them to override the existing permissions or define your own and make use of them in your services. Overall, using XML contributions is a great way to tweak existing Nuxeo Platform functionalities without coding, and it makes things easier to maintain in the long term. Now we'll let you get started coding, And we'll be back in our next video to tell you how to package and deploy what you've done. Thanks for watching.